Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zandriel Grimm, and today we're going to talk about how life keeps coming and it just keeps coming and it just keeps coming. But in this case, we're referring to the fact that every single time that Motionless and White, one of my absolute favorite bands, releases a new album, they're going to do a sequel of one of their songs. This has been going on since literally their first album, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the obvious that it's kind of an odd concept. But why do they do it? Unfortunately, Chris hasn't explained why they do it, except that, well, apparently the fans love it. He has also gone on record once, maybe twice, about how they chose certain songs because he thinks the original ones sucked.
There's going to be a sequel track to a song on Creatures called Undead Ahead. So we're going to do an Undead Ahead too, because the first one sucked.
I had to watch the entire documentary again, just so I could find that part again. Some of them are supposed to be linked together in a continuous story, such as the Puppets trilogy and a few others. But for the most part, it's kind of just up in the air as to what songs specifically get sequels. And me, being the absolute nerd that I am, I want to talk about all the ones that I know are sequels, and even some that I'm fairly certain are sequels, albeit indirectly. So, boys, gals, and non-binary pals, let's dive into the curious case of the many Motionless and White sequels. I'm going to be discussing the sequels in the order of when the song sequel itself appeared, not where the original song originated. Yeah, that was a good sentence, wasn't it?
That was a good sentence, wasn't it?
And we'll even throw in a couple tidbits here and there that I've learned over the years. Be prepared to hit the "No, Zandriel, you missed this one, it's so obvious, how did you not know?" in the comments below, because I know that even with all of my research and logic, I'll still probably miss one or more or some. Especially if it comes from the horror EP, because I did not like that one at all. Just know that even though I am a massive fan, I know that there are some bigger ones than me. Shoot, I did extensive research on my Dennis Stoff video. I thought I knew all there was to know about our adorable Ukrainian boy, and then I got overwhelmed by comments of people telling me that there was even more information than I had realized was out there. So with a band as world famous as Motionless and White is, I'm sure that my ADHD ass will miss a couple. Anyways, I'm rambling. Let's just jump right into it. Zandriel, starting this one off with an unofficial sequel, huh? Shut up. So, when Creatures released in 2010, which makes it younger than my favorite video game Brutal Legend, by the way, they had actually taken the title track from their When Love Met Destruction album and made it into the title track for this album as well. Personally, I like the Creatures track version of it better, so I'm not too heartbroken that they took out the original release for their EP re-release. They also remade the entire We Only Come Out at Night track, adding in the intro as well as much better sound quality for the second track, Creatures. And because I know some people are going to mention this without seeing the rest of the video, they also did remake the track Banana Montana on Creatures into City Lights, but I'll cover that particular song in a little bit. It's so weird to think about the fact that if it hadn't been for the two EPs that Motionless and White released when they were 17-ish, we wouldn't have these amazing powerhouses in the metal community today. Wow. With the .com duo, they do display significantly different sounds from one another. Schizophrenic Cannibalistic Sexfest.com was from their The Horror EP, which, again, I did not like. But then .com Part 2 was from their first album, Creatures, also making this their first official sequel. Funnily enough, they played the first .com quite a lot when they performed live in their early days, but then .com Part 2 didn't get played until their first Deadstream. Even though it's not my favorite song on Creatures, which is probably why they haven't played it until the Deadstream, I still prefer Part 2 to the original. I just did not like the horror at all. I've tried, I gave it multiple glances, but there's just nothing about it that I particularly like. But I'm sure some diehard The Horror fans out there are gonna roast me in the comments anyway. Chris has made it very well known that he does not like City Lights, and since Banana Montana is quite literally the same song, I wouldn't be surprised if he hated that version from the get-go as well. I don't think it was ever confirmed, but I do believe that Cinematic is a sequel to City Lights that Chris enjoys a lot better. I mostly believe that because of the comments that he made during the second Dead stream. So, albeit not a direct sequel, I do consider Cinematic to be City Lights Part 2. Personally, I love all three versions. City Lights and Banana Montana are basically the same thing, and in Creatures, I'm glad whoever twisted Chris's arm to redo the song did, because I think that the Creatures touch to it is absolutely beautiful. In fact, a friend of mine and I had this theory that the record label told them to do it, and Chris just said, "Fine!" and pouted the whole time. It's all in good fun, I swear. But then, with Cinematic, it adds a much creepier and dark tone that City Lights was missing, and I highly doubt that's a coincidence between the two songs. So again, even though I absolutely adore both versions, Cinematic is more on par with Motionless in White style, so I would be remiss to say that Cinematic is anything but superior, especially since Chris prefers that song over City Lights anyway. Yes, the Puppets trilogy. This is the thing that everyone thinks of when they think of Motionless in White's various sequels. Puppets began in Creatures and had entries all the way through to Reincarnate, which I'm sure someone will tell me that I'm wrong if I am, but I'm pretty sure that that's the only direct sequel in Reincarnate. I couldn't find any other information on any other songs in the album being sequels, whether it be directly or indirectly. Now, that TikTok that I referenced earlier did say the other songs on the infamous album were also linked to the Puppet series. Songs like Black Damask and Fatal apparently connect to it as well, but Chris has never explained how, so that's why the transition card has the etc. at the end of it. Don't forget the etc., Luke. So this is actually something that gives a slight bit of controversy no matter which way you have an opinion on it. I personally like the first one better. I feel like the first Snow has a lot more emotion behind it, and overall I just enjoy it more. I remember when a specific blonde and I were working together, he swore upon the third one, the grand finale featuring Danny Filth. I see where it comes from, but I honestly disagree. Then, because we were having a friendly argument about it, I put a poll in the community tab on my YouTube channel, and it seems like you guys like 2, The Rain featuring Bjorn, the best. The more you know, huh? So it truly is a mixed bag, but hey, I like what I like. And so do you. Again, not a confirmed sequel exactly, but the similarities between the two are too uncanny for me to ignore. With Unstoppable being in the Reincarnate album, it was a heavier version of the style that they were going for. Meanwhile, Untouchable in Graveyard Shift album was going for what I believe is a more catchy version. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty split between the two of them. I think they're both pretty good songs, although neither are particularly great. I'm pretty indifferent between them, but I still jam out to them pretty easily.
Yeah, she may be fucking dead, but I don't care, yeah! She loves me cause I like to get mad like a zombie.
So, the Dead as F song, I'm actually incredibly glad they did a sequel to, because I did not like the first version whatsoever. Reincarnate as an album is pretty hit or miss, and there are plenty of songs on that album that I do not like. In fact, there was a period of time where the only tracks that I listened to on that album were Break the Cycle, Wasp, the title track, and the remix of Cinematic. Nowadays, I can listen to most of the album pretty alright. I still do not like Finale'd Victim, or however you pronounce it, at all, and sadly, Dead as Fuck just doesn't make it anywhere near the top of my favorite Motionless in White songs. With Graveyard Shift, it was a much bigger improvement, and I think when Motionless in White started to swing back into fun times. Because even though some of it is admittedly cringy, I'm looking right at you, Necessary Evil, they had some incredible improvements. For me, this is the easiest one out of all of the sequels so far. I like Dead as Fuck 2 much better than the first one. this is the song that I was incredibly excited to talk about. Disguise was the first album that was new after I became a fan of Motionless in White. Their most recent one at that point was Graveyard Shift, and then they announced Disguise, and I was like... So, needless to say, I was cautiously optimistic. What? I didn't like Reincarnate. I thought Infamous was okay. I didn't like either of the EPs at the time, and the only thing that I thought were particularly good from them were Creatures and Graveyard Shift. But thankfully, when Undead Ahead 2 released, I was more than happy. I was pretty pumped. Lo and behold, when Disguise released in 2019, it became one of my favorite albums ever, and Undead Ahead 2 was fucking awesome. Now, Chris said that they chose to redo Undead Ahead because the original sucked, as referenced as the start of the monstrosity of a video. Jesus Christ, 11 pages of script. Luke is gonna fucking kill me. But I'll just leave it at this. Undead Ahead 2 was a great throwback to their original sound and creatures, and I could not be happier about it. Even though I didn't think the original was bad by any means, Undead 2 was easily better. Very cool, but surprisingly, that was the only sequel on this album as well. I will say that Motionless in White did release motion picture versions of Eternally Yours and Another Life, and then a couple of remixes of other songs, but I'm not gonna bother with those because it's more of a reimagining rather than a sequel. Moving on! Ah, yes, the original Creatures and Creatures X. What a turnaround! Now, the reason I didn't want to include this with When Love Met Destruction is because When Love Met Destruction was unofficial, but this is the officially official sequel. The reasoning for this one is because, just like the Roman numeric X is, it had been 10 years since the original Creatures released. Both versions of the song are phenomenal in and of themselves. They sound like completely different songs, so I feel like comparing them isn't really fair. On my Motionless in White playlist, though, I just shoved this song right after Undead Ahead 2, and then I switched where Holding On to Smoke and Catharsis are, and I am absolutely in love with it. Anyway, both songs are great. Moving on. This is, I think, the first time I was questioning why a song got a sequel. Burned at Both Ends, the original, I thought was fine, and I was trying to figure out why they wanted to sequel it. Personally, I would have preferred if they sequeled If It's Dead We'll Kill It, if they're gonna sequel something off of Infamous. Now, I will say that easily Burned at Both Ends 2 was much better, much heavier and melodic at the same time, I think.
Yourself, we've got nothing to prove. We are the weirdos in your stereo, motherfucker. Where you go, what you
Okay, let's be honest, how could they not sequel this song? Broadcasting from Beyond the Grave was the most obvious sequel, especially since they said it was going to come back in Disguise. Both Broadcasting from Beyond the Grave and Burned at Both Ends 2 were on their most recent album, Scoring of the End of the World, which is easily my favorite album from them, even though Disguise is up there as well. But I will say that of the two broadcasts, Corpse Nation is so much better. It's dark, menacing, heavy, and the big ol' fuck you at the very end of the song is just so satisfying. The original, even though I did like it, is a bit too goofy for my taste. I realize it's the only song on the album that they were trying to be goofy, but I just, yeah. Corpse Nation was so good! Oh boy, this video took much longer than I had anticipated. I didn't think I'd be this interested in it. A bit obsessive, don't you think? Anyways, I hope you all had a fantastic time listening to me talking about one of my favorite artists ever, and I hope that you all stick around for a good while. Don't forget to check out my other videos. I always have fun making these. Let's wrap this up. My name is Zandriel Grimm, and I'll see you all later.